Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to the Iron Bark Podcast. I am your host, Epion, and today I'm just going to talk about some animals I like. I'm just going to be shoot straight, go right into it, and just talk about some animals. Okay, so you guys know grizzly bears, black bears, basically bears in general. They're kind of interesting. Some of the little facts that I like about bears would be they're sort of the top of the food chain in many environments. What happens is they actually end up being kind of cannibalistic and cannibalizing other young bears, kind of like a way of controlling their own population so it doesn't get out of control. And if they didn't have, because they don't have predators, so if they didn't have themselves as predators, there may be too many of them. People still argue that there is, and then people advocate for the hunting of bears and that kind of stuff like that. It gets kind of controversial. Another thing about them is they have a parasite known as trichinella, which causes trichinosis. So you ever see these videos or pictures of bears where they have these long tapeworm or really long worms coming out of their rear end? Well, that's trichinella. And the thing is, you can get that inside you as a person. If you consume bear meat and there's a little bit of egg on that meat and you consume it, or even if it had some larvae or egg on its fur and you touched its fur, then you touched your eyes or your mouth, it could get into you as well. It's a little disturbing. And the thing is, when it comes to bears and I believe maybe raccoons, maybe pigs, I can't remember which, probably not pigs, but when it's inside a raccoon or a bear, it knows where its digestive tract is and it knows how to get there. When it's in sort of a host it's not familiar with, like a human, it doesn't know where a digestive tract is and it ends up just about anywhere, including your eyeballs. And there's examples of that on Google Images, and so go check that out. It's kind of disturbing, but yeah. Another thing I've been told is that bear meat tastes a lot like what bears eat. So if they're in a blueberry area with lots of blueberries, the meat's going to taste like blueberries. If they're eating a lot of fish, it's going to taste fishy, and people say it's not the greatest. Another thing is bears eat a lot of garbage. So if you eat bear meat and it's a garbage bear, it's going to taste like diapers. Moose. I'm going to move on to moose now. Something interesting about moose is that, instead of grazing, they do this thing called browse. And what browsing is they're very selective about the veggies they eat. And they probably do this for nutrient purposes. They're selective on which ones they want to eat. And for that reason, they're difficult to keep in captivity. I think you can supply them with additional nutrients, kind of just provide it to them. But if you want to provide them with an environment where they feel like they're in their natural habitat, so they have wetlands and stuff like that, it's going to be very large, and maybe those plants won't always be readily available. So it's kind of interesting that that they browse. They're picky eaters in a way. The next animal I want to talk about is pronghorn. Pronghorns probably has the coolest amount of facts. So it's been around since the Pleistocene era, so woolly mammoth, that type of stuff. And it's the second fastest land animal, second only to the cheetah. But the interesting thing about them regarding their speed is that it also maintains its top speed for a longer duration than the cheetah maintains its top speed. Now the cheetah has a higher top speed, so just something to compare it to. So it is kind of the fastest in a way. It evolved these high speeds because during the Pleistocene era, in North America, there was an animal very similar to the cheetah where it could reach extremely high speeds. So they evolved to outrun that. When the mass extinctions happened, well, that animal stopped existing, but the pronghorn continued on. So it kind of outran extinction in a way. That's sort of interesting. It's pretty cool. And even though they look like antelope or deer, they're actually more closely related to giraffes. And, they're not as tall or long as giraffes, but, they're kind of short. But that's why I like to call them a Canadian giraffe. It's sort of like a spoof on a giraffe, It's kind of interesting, kind of neat, kind of funny. Mountain goats. Mountain goats, they're white, little spiky, dark horns, top of their head. Look like wise old men. They live very high up in the mountains. They're very difficult to find for this reason. I think they only come down once or twice a year from most people I've spoken to. I've only ever really seen them really high up. The rule of thumb for them is basically mountain goats start where bighorn sheep stop. Though their territory does overlap, and I have seen them together on higher areas. They do that for breeding purposes, I think, to raise their young so they're not easily picked up by lions and bears and that sort of thing. Now moving on to bighorn sheep. I don't know, they like to crack skulls. They like to smash each other in the head. Kind of interesting. Straightforward. We've all seen that. Whitetail deer versus mule deer. Generally, you kind of look at them and you're like, that's the same animal. It's a deer. A deer is a deer is a deer is a deer. Well, they're actually kind of different, especially if you have them side by side. And if you pull this up on Google Images, you do like whitetail versus mule deer. You'll see like pretty distinctive photos that help you identify them, like spot the knot type of stuff. But mule deer, their antlers fork. So you want to make a peace sign with your hand, like put up two fingers. Their antlers kind of do a thing like that where they fork. Mule deer also have black tips on their tails. I like to think they have like bigger ears, sort of, but I don't know. Each species kind of has some overlap, and they do interbreed. They can interbreed. It's exceptionally hard to tell if they're an actual hybrid or not. You'd actually have to DNA test them, I think, to affirm that. But there is some crossover of that species. Polar bears, it's like an Arctic animal. They're interbreeding with grizzlies. Kind of interesting, right? Isn't that kind of interesting? It's like a new hybrid species there. Wolverine, very elusive, very hard to find. It's basically a giant badger. Not giant, kind of the same size, but he's a little bit more badass. What else can I say? Oh, the relationship between wolves and mountain lions. Pretty interesting stuff. So you have a pack of wolves. They have an alpha. They have like a leader, pack leader. The pack leader typically has, in most cases, according to research, it has a parasite. Oh no, the parasite is escaping my mind. I wish I could remember it off the top of my head. I'm going to remember what's the cat parasite called? Cat parasite. Toxoplasmosis. That's it. So a lot of the time the pack leader will have toxoplasmosis, which usually increases like not aggressive behavior, but risk-taking behavior. So the pack leader will lead the pack towards mountain lions more often, and will harass the mountain lions for their food. So a cached kill or something they've, killed and now they're feeding on it. This actually has changed mountain lion behavior where now they'll have additional caches of, prey that they've killed just to kind of appease the wolves so the wolves stop harassing the mountain lion because it likes to be elusive and alone. But during this, there's kind of like a point where the wolves will come in contact with more toxo. Then they'll be infected. And then some of those wolves will defect from the pack, become lone wolves or pack leaders of a new pack. And then they'll take their new pack that doesn't have a high infection rate. And then so on and so forth. So there's like this symbiotic relationship between mountain lions and wolves. And it's pretty interesting. That's pretty interesting. That's pretty much most of the facts, I think, that I can think of off the top of my head. Those are some interesting ones. Those are the kind of things that I learn about wildlife where I go, wildlife's so fucking cool. Like, I just love learning about them. I love how they have all these little adaptations, these, built-in relationships with each other. They have like these little nuances and why do these little things exist and these evolutionary developments and adaptations. It's I don't know. To me, it's like reading a book kind of. It's and finding out like what life is all about. Can we speculate about an animal that doesn't exist, or perhaps it does exist? Talking about the Sasquatch. Do you guys think Sasquatch is real? Well, if it were, it would quite possibly be a primate. Maybe it's still a living Gigantopithecus, which lived during the Pleistocene era. Now, maybe it's a very elusive species. I want you to go to Google and I want you to go to type in panda. And I think if you go to the Wikipedia page and look at that, its distribution on a map, you're going to see a very small red dot in China. So here you have a bear that lives in China that's in a very specific remote region. If you had not explored any other region outside of that small little red dot, you would not think pandas exist. Had that spot never been discovered or never been reachable, we would not know that pandas exist. Could there be a small, dense region where these giant apes live in North America? Seems a bit far-fetched. It does, right? You know, we have monkeys in South America. How come North America doesn't really have monkeys? Or northern North America, at least. There should be some sort of ape, right? No? It's an interesting thought. We know golden languars, right? They've been researched and studied and shown to actively avoid interactions with humans. Could a similar trait exist in a giant ape? We don't know. We don't know. But it's fun to speculate. And if it did exist, it most certainly would have those traits. It's interesting to think about. We didn't know about the Bondo apes for a while. And then they found them in a little region, I believe, in the Congo. So I think they're billy apes. I can't remember. It's possible. It's possible. We don't know. Let's take a look. I think I've been slacking on my X posts recently. My X content is it almost defunct at this point? Yeah, pretty much. I'm posting like random videos of me out. Nothing really meaningful. Oh, I don't know why I didn't think about this, but I should have been talking about this. March 3rd was World Wildlife Day. Happy World Wildlife, everyone. Oh my god, I fucked up that post. Another important post to consider for reading. Yeah, I shared the Colossal Biosciences article. I shared a repost of an old video for World Wildlife Day. And that's like the last podcast. I really made like 2 posts. I think I deleted another one, 3. I made 3 posts. 4. I'm dropping the ball. The ball has been dropped many times before. This ball, it's a very small ball that's been dropped. But something cool coming out of Colossal Bioscience. Something very cool. I'm just going to click on their page. They have a woolly mouse. They select the genes for the mammoth and put it into the mouse. The woolly mouse. It's very cute. It's very fluffy looking. I don't know if we'd ever get one as a pet. I think these would actually be. So if these were pets and they got out, they may actually be significantly detrimental to the ecosystem. It's possible, right? Like if you think about it, I think it might have like cold resistance, so they would be more successful in colder climates, perhaps allowing them to like live in barns and stuff where they would normally die off in the winter, eating a lot of like food, crop, whatever, seed. I think seed is the biggest concern. That's interesting. It's interesting, right? And then they would like hybridize with native mice species, and who knows, they would then become the dominant species. And then the species that existed before, like just a common field mouse, doesn't exist any longer after that. Right? Could happen. So I think it's like you couldn't even like really have them as pets unless they were they couldn't reproduce. So that's kind of interesting. But I can see, like, I want one as a pet. Like, I look at them like, oh, that's adorable. It's unique. It's kind of like this, like, super cool genetic thing that has, like, woolly mammoth gene in it. Like, what? Interesting. Very interesting. I wonder how long until they took those genes and put it into an elephant. Isn't that basically a mammoth at that point? I guess there's a few more genes would have to put in besides just like the hair one. There have to be like a tusk one. There's probably like a skull difference. There's a whole bunch of differences. Anyway, folks, that's pretty much it for the podcast. Sorry if that one was brutal and boring, but it was quick and to the point, and I hope you learned something. I hope you learned a little something there, eh? Did you learn something interesting? I didn't. I did not. It's been hard to stay motivated to create on X and to post stuff there. It really has been. I've been trying like pretty hard to stay positive and motivated. But I don't know, like they keep changing so much. Like now it's like something ridiculous. I was in like a Spaces earlier today and I was talking to people. They were saying it was like $70 or something for like X Premium, like the highest one, and it was just kind of like, what are we doing here? Like we're at levels of like insanity with like paying like for an account. Like it's like what the like, and obviously there's more affordable options, but it was just kind of like it seems like this like barrier of entry just keeps kind of like going further and further and further. And I think there's really is something to be said. When Elon bought the platform, he's like, oh, I don't want the blue check to be like this barrier of like elitism. I want everyone to be able to have one. And he made it affordable, right? And it made sense. You can still get a blue check mark for relatively affordable, but there's like different levels of reach depending on like the tier you have. So now if you want the most reach possible, if you want to build an account, you would have to go with the most expensive one. So in effect, you're kind of paying to win, which then kind of gives way to like corporate sponsored or funded things being able to sort of have like the most impact. So like if you're a big corporation and you're like, oh, we want to make a bunch of content creators, but we're going to make them look like they're original and this and that, but technically they're just, these things that we've developed. We give them their script, yada, yada, yada. And we're just basically going to pay $1,000 a month to give them gold check marks and have their content just like be able to reach as many people as possible. And they'll grow very quickly based off of that increased reach. And it doesn't have to be the gold check mark. It could be like the $70 blue one or whatever. But it's just like now the elitism before the barrier of entry used to be like they just arbitrarily decided if you were worth having one or not. Now it's like, do you have the money? And that's still like elitism because now it's sort of like, the broke guys or the poor people or the people that are struggling with money or whatever, where money's a bit tighter. It's like they're excluded from it. In a way, like they're excluded from it based off of what their financial means are, which basically makes it elite again. So it's kind of gone full circle and it's kind of become what it wasn't supposed to be. And yeah, I don't know. I think kind of like the integration of Grok AI into the X platform, it's cool, it's unique, and it brings something like interesting to the platform, but integrating it into like the necessities of like content creation, like that extra reach. So justifying, basically creating, I'll call like an excuse or justification for charging that much. It's like, oh, you're getting like the beta access to the most, newest AI, this and that, And that's not necessarily always a good thing. Like sometimes like the newest version of the AI is just like, it's just like kind of broken in a way and it needs like a lot of tuning and work. But I don't know. I feel like we're overlapping too many utilities that people don't necessarily want. Like I don't want to pay $70 a month for Grok AI. There's other AI that are more affordable for like $20 that could do more for me for content creation in terms of like image generation. If I just want to make logos and stuff. I don't know. It just like, can we get back to the basics of like content creation? It just seems like the X platform has forgotten about content creation. It just wants to focus on news, politics, that sort of like, I don't know, dispute and discussion and debate between people. And it doesn't really want to focus on nothing that can't, I don't know, like if even if you have like art and beautiful stuff, it's like all curated. Like it's not going to come from like original creators. It's going to come from like people that take stuff from all the other creators and to pick their best stuff and put it into like a highlight reel. It's curation accounts or whatever they're called. It's interesting to think about that way, but it's like, I don't know where along the lines they decided this isn't going to be a content creation platform anymore. We're not going to focus on that anymore. And now it's like just going with what it feels like it's just going to what it's working for it and what it knows instead of being like the everything platform. It's like let's just hyper focus on what this platform's successful at. I think it's basically crowdfunding a lot of its money now at this point because people paying a lot of money to have like that $70 account. So it's basically, I don't know. I don't like that. I don't like it at all. Started posting on YouTube more this week. Not this week. Maybe not this week. Yeah, no, I think I missed this week. But I've been doing it. The reach is terrible now for some reason. I don't get like any reach. I used to get like hundreds of views per video. Now it's like doesn't even break 100. I don't know what the answer is anymore, folks. I don't know. I think I'm going to start skateboarding more and more again and putting up videos. So I have like an alternate account at Beyond Skates. You can check that out. Anyway, this was definitely like a throw in the towel episode podcast. I just didn't have the inspiration, but I still wanted to bang one out for y'all. Yeah, that's all. Take care. Have a wonderful evening. Or day. Whatever you're...